Welcome, folks. It's another episode of the Gary and Mark Show, and I'm Gary.
And I am Mark.
And we're coming to you...
We're coming to you from definitely a different place.
Yeah, we are. We're down... We're in Tryon.
Tryon, North Carolina.
Yeah.
And we're at a retirement community.
Yes.
And we have a very special guest with us.
I would say so.
And for many reasons.
Yeah.
But starters, okay, this is episode number 60 of the Gary and Mark Show. And so for viewers, this is also a combination Gary and Mark Show podcast and the Country Life with ColumbusMark YouTube.
Yeah.
So
it's all that.
It's all that and more. So we have with us today Bob Bessell. Right alone, that's probably enough. Some people may have heard of him. But many things are special about Bob. I don't even know where to begin. But the one I want to start with, and I guess it's not going to embarrass him, he's 102 years old. Unless he's joking.
Yeah.
And that's living proof that if you live long enough and you're stupid enough, you get an interview.
Yeah, well, hey.
And I want to prove my stupidity. When I was in junior high school, Leroy Grummond set up a machine shop in the basement of my junior high school. We boys spent an hour after class, and we built an aluminum fuselage.
Mm-hmm.
After I graduated high school, I took my little toolkit, and I went over to the Grummond factory. And the Grummond factory consisted of a 3-story building made out of brick, and there wasn't a window in it. And I decided that if I got a job in there, I'd never see the sun. So I put my toolkit down, and I left, and I joined the Merchant Marine. I can't forgive myself for the stupidity that I showed at that time in my life.
And how old were you at that time?
19.
So you had finished high school?
Yeah, 18 and 19, yeah.
And
I majored in football.
There.
Well, I could have been an astronaut, for goodness sake.
Yeah.
Well, you could have, and you've blazed a lot of trails no matter what. And so you joined the Merchant Marines. So for people who aren't familiar with that, explain how the Merchant Marines fits into the whole thing of United States government and private industry as well.
Well, it was tricky back in the 30s and 40s because there'd been a strike. They struck for better food, better wages, and good God, they were entitled to that.
Who was striking? The Merchant Marines?
The men who sailed the ships, and I was trained by the administration. I went in October of 41.
Oh, before.
Yeah, and we were
October.
The program was a 7-month program, and they promised us an able seaman's ticket and a lifeboatman's ticket, so that we could go to Joe Curran's maritime union and get a ship. You see, the trouble was, I had one trip to England under my belt on J.P. Morgan's the Corsair, and I wanted to get a ship because nobody remembers the Depression, but the Depression was a bad time.
Yeah.
We lost our house. It was bad time, and a job was an important thing to have. Well, I couldn't get a ship because I wasn't in the NMU, National Maritime Union. And so this program started by the government. They realized they're going to need some ships around here, and they got to train people to man the ships. Okay, on my first ship, the West Hardaway, there were the old boys who had been on the strike, and then there were two of us from Hoffman Island who were making. I was an AB, he was an AB. We were making the same money that they were, but truth be known, we were as green as grass, and they knew it, and so it was kind of us against them. So it was an uncomfortable thing. And
were they mostly older or about the same age?
They were older, and the ship was in Baltimore, and the way they handled it, they were drunk most of the time.
Well,
and I certainly don't blame them. And there came a time we had to shift the ship 60 or 80 feet ahead. Her boilers were down, and she was hooked up to a tug, and the tug was pushing on the spring line, and the spring line was plowshare steel, 2 inches diameter, and it was on a bollard, and the pressure, it was going bang, 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 taking the pressure off the lower layers. And I was ordered forward with one of the ABs and to slack off the spring line. Well, I could see he wasn't going to do anything about it, so I untied the 9 thread that held the line on the bollard, and I eased each layer off, and lo and behold, it snaked out like a moving snake. And the guy on the bridge said, "Yeah, good." And but I had made an enemy because I had said to this old AB, "Well, for God's sake, won't you clear the slack?" Well, I'll tell you the story later, but it goes on forever. I'm pausing because Hoffman Island was a 7-month program. Admiral Donitz, when the Japanese attacked Pearl Harbor, it opened up the east coast of America to Admiral Donitz and his good boys. He called them lions, and in a sense they were killers. They killed 43 ships.
Wow.
At that time, the boffos who make decisions on your life came to Hoffman Island, and they took Section 32, and they took them to New York, and they locked them in the Sloan House, which is a YMCA sort of thing. And then they took them down to the Jersey and Delaware coast and put them on tankers that went out to what Admiral Donitz called the Neulands, his new lands, or the happy times. And they were, I don't know, because I never heard from, there were 30-some odd souls. I know that Albert Terhan was killed, but I expect they were killed during Neulands. Admiral King, fearful that the Germans would know that they were having a tremendous good time over here, slapped a news blanket on all of the newspapers, and Admiral Donitz had another project he called Drumbeat. He sent more U-boats, another wave of U-boats over to our coast, into which I sailed on the West Hardaway, fat, dumb, and blind. no idea what was going on. And when we left an anchorage called Wolf Trap down near Newport News, and we went out the inlet, there was the smokestack and two masts of a ship that they'd been dragging in, and she just sunk there in the entrance to the harbor, a harbinger of what was to come. Okay, this was May of 42.
And this is the Germans just having a duck hunt on our boats. Just,
you know, I can't tell you how impotent it made us feel. That there was, I mean, good God, they never turned off the lights in New York, New Jersey, Jacksonville, Miami. And so here comes a ship down the coast, I mean, making a beautiful target for a U-boat. The stupidity and the inactivity. King was bent on rebuilding the Pacific Fleet. What he needed was any kind of a boat that could roll a depth charge off and had had sonar. That's what was needed. We were escorted down the coast. King's theory was no convoy was better than a bad convoy. Well, we had a bad convoy. We had one destroyer and a couple of 83-footers. And they took us as far south as Key West, Florida. And then they came back through the convoy and they said, goodbye, good luck. And 17 of us broke off for Trinidad, and the rest, there was a 30-odd ship convoy, and the rest of them went to towards the Panama Canal and Texas. I'm here to tell you that of the 17 ships, not one of them made it to Trinidad. We were carrying railroad equipment, locomotives, ties, coal, because Churchill and Roosevelt, in their meeting in Canada, had decided that the Murmansk run was too expensive. We can go into that later if you want. So they were going to build a second line from Basra, or from the Persian Gulf, up to Russia to get supplies. The Russian guy was raising hell about the second front.
yeah.
So this was the way to get material up to Russia from Basra or that part of, and
In the Middle East.
in the Middle East, up to Russia.
Yeah.
And of course, we got within a day's run of Trinidad, and that's when the German skipper von Rosenstiel got us in his sights and put a torpedo into us, and
we've seen photos
which we'll
Bob
have
has
playing.
yeah.
of that.
And how long have you been in the Merchant Marines at this point?
Well,
Just a few months, right?
Half a year?
Yeah, half a year, 6 months. Yeah.
Goodness.
The torpedoing, okay. I was up forward on number 2 hatch making a hammock because we were about 5 degrees north of the equator, and it was getting hotter than you wouldn't want to believe in the forecastle. And the chief officer leaned over the rail of the ship and he said, "Bessell, you better get up here where there are people." Well, okay. He was an officer on my ship. It was a strange thing for him to say. But I did it. I dropped what I was doing, and I climbed up to the boat deck, to my boat with number 4, and this god-awful explosion went off. And I was thrown on my hands and knees, and I looked over my shoulder, and this thing was going up. And I thought, dear God, when that comes back down, it's going to kill me. Well, strange to say that it drifted off in a mist of a noxious smell of cordite. It burnt your nostrils, and it was a good thing that didn't last, because it would have killed you. And then the boats were built so that the handle on the davits were for 2 men. Well, the bosun materialized out of nowhere, and he took the forward handle. I took the after, and we lifted that lifeboat off its chocks and swung it out to a launching position. Adrenaline going like mad.
I bet.
And then I got in the boat, and they lowered it away, and we were just about to let go the falls when the captain came to the side, and he shouted down to the second mate, "Hold there a minute, I got to get my sextant." Well, gentlemen, after that was probably 5 minutes of the worst time in my life.
And you're like 20, right?
Yeah,
yeah,
20,
wow.
21. Because if another torpedo came into the ship, and it eventually did, if a torpedo came underneath our tin boat, man, we'd be fish food ground fine. But he eventually showed up with his sextant, which he lowered into the boat, and he came down the man rope, and we were able to cast off and get away from the ship. The wind took us over to the port quarter of the ship. That meant that the U-boat, which was up on the starboard bow, couldn't see us. He saw the boats launching away, and so I've read, and history, whatever I've read, proves that this is completely possible. He looked at a ship that the bulkheads were holding. She wasn't sinking. She wasn't going down, because even though she was wounded, she wasn't going down. Well, here for him, we were the last ship that he hit, because he was on his way back to Rochelle, France. And what was offered was he'd put a crew aboard the ship and plunder it for food, anything that would help them get back to France on a U-boat that was probably short of rations. Well, our captain decided to go back on the boat because he saw she wasn't sinking. And he went back on board. We went back on board. And Freddie Griffith and I were plundering the slop chest for candy, cigarettes, anything we could use in the lifeboat, because we weren't betting that she wasn't going to go down.
Right.
And then the 20-millimeter gun back aft went off. They were firing at something. And we ran to the rail, and there was the U-boat laying about 100 yards off. And every seventh round of that 20-millimeter was a tracer, and that conning tower was sparkling with tracer tracer fire, keeping the Germans away from their deck gun, because, good God, if they ever got on that deck gun, that would have signed that had put paid to our existence. But they never got there because of that 20 millimeter gun. And then the 4-inch 50 went off. Well, the first shell went to the moon. The second shell went about 500 yards out. And the third shell exploded on the conning tower of that U-boat as she was crash diving. And I sure wonder how much damage we did to him. We couldn't have done him much damage because he got her all the way back to France.
And like La Rochelle, they had a big submarine base there,
yes,
right?
Yeah. And by the way, I celebrate the life of a fellow by the name of Lee. He was a British pilot in World War I. He was flying an aircraft, an amphibious aircraft, down around Basra. The Arabs had an Indian regiment surrounded, and he was flying supplies into that Indian regiment. They lost the Indian regiment, as a matter of fact. But anyway, Lee came back to at least spend his post-war life in that area working in the cotton industry. World War II comes along. He comes back to England, joins the RAF. He's down in Cornwall interviewing flyers that have come back from the Bay of Biscay. And by that time, the Coastal Command, the British Coastal Command, had radar. It was small enough radar they could mount it on a aircraft. Well, they could locate a U-boat on the surface at night charging his batteries, which was a thing that they had to do. They had to keep their electric up. And they could fly over and drop bombs, but they weren't able to see the U-boat because it was black. So they just salvo whatever and pray to God. Well, okay, flying away from that U-boat, they're presenting the U-boat with 4 exhaust stacks, which the Germans were happy to shoot at, and they shot down 6 aircraft. Well, okay, along comes Lee, and he hears all this mess, and he says, well, hell, let's just light the bastards up. And so he, with his own money, he didn't tell Whitehall anything. He designed, built, paid for, installed what they called a Lee light, which is a 1,000,000 candle power light. And I still get kind of skin crawling on the back of my neck. My U-boat, the U-boat that sunk my ship, was the first U-boat to be sunk by radar and the Lee light. And to compound the story, it was piloted by an American by the name of Howell, and he actually was the pilot whose aircraft sunk U-502, von Rosenstiel. And he got to see the king. The British gonged him, and the American Navy made him an offer he couldn't refuse. And so they made him he was a lieutenant. He had been a lieutenant, but they made him a full Navy captain and gave him a command. Fate is a weird thing.
This is an amazing thread that goes through.
The way this,
And so Was that your closest call during the war?
Oh, hell no.
Oh, yeah. Oh, I see V2, V1 rocket, they're Antwerp.
This is they call it the...
Is it upside down?
It's upside down, yeah.
Yeah.
At least I can tell that.
These are the rocket sites.
The Belgians were pretty good. This is the Andresmont of Antwerp from October 7th of October 44 to 30th of March 45. My ship, the Zane Grey, was in Antwerp in December, January, and February of 1945, and this
is back when Montgomery's trying that Operation Market Garden that didn't quite.
Yep.
Yeah.
This is Mr. Hitler wanted Antwerp. That's what the Battle of the Bulge was all about. If he had been successful, he would have gotten Antwerp. What he would have done with it, God only knows. But when those men in their shoes, no snow gear, and it was snowing.
Here, I'll hold the map. You get that mic. Yeah.
When those men stopped the German bulge from getting Antwerp, the Germans decided, well, if we can't have Antwerp, nobody's going to have Antwerp. And what you're looking at is what the Belgians plotted of V1s and V2s. I believe the red are the V2s, and the blue are the V1s, and
just multiple the number of rocket sites.
And my ship was laying at a dock up here, and the dock workers, the people who came to work the ships were paid a bonus for unloading the ships, and they called their bonus money Trumbull money. Well, if you've never heard of V1, you don't know what trembling is like.
Because it'd make a big buzz, and then there would be a pause before the explosion.
And what you don't hear is after that ramjet engine stops, there's a pause.
Yeah.
But then, if you're in Antwerp, you hear the whistling of the wind across the wings. You know, we people are pretty good at locating things. And if this thing stopped at 45 degrees in front of you, you knew you're going to hear the wind coming across the wings of this 1,000-pound bomb. And it was going to be pretty damn close. And I remember a day, the alarm went off. Well, we never had alarms for the V1s or the V2s, but the alarm meant that there was an aircraft somewhere in the area. Well, the skipper and I went up on the flying bridge, and we could see to the south there was something had lit up a fuel dump, and there was a big column of black smoke going up. And there were two aluminum aircraft. Turns out they were the first German jets. They were, and I've identified from Jane's aircraft of the different countries that they were two Arados, which was not Messerschmitt. They were Arados. They were silver, and they went down to the smoke, flew around, and came back over, and one of them detached and came over us. And I had my binoculars on her, and I could see this little black thing come away. And eventually, trying to follow it, I lost it because it was too fast for me. Gents, that guy pickled that bomb down the smokestack of the American farmer, killed the operator, killed the oil at the engineer and the oiler in the engine room, and sunk her right at the dock. And the gunners were cussing and swearing and ripping and tearing. None of us knew that what we were working with were 2 jet aircraft.
Wow.
And they were going faster than, scat. So that was Antwerp.
And you saw all of the...
And then, thank you. We're being...
This is his daughter over here helping.
Yes.
We're getting the hell bombed out of us by these 2 Arados. And you look up at 30 or 40,000 feet, and there's 1,000 aircraft contrails of a big raid going into Germany. And, hey, come on down here. We got business.
Those were American planes, you mean?
Yeah.
That you saw?
Yeah. Well, in the daylight, it would be the 9th Air Force.
My dad was in the 8th Air Force.
Well, it could have been the 8th or 9th.
B-24.
Yeah.
And when wasn't that?
I was just saying, my brother's father-in-law, he was one of those with the frostbit feet, the Battle of the Bulge.
Oh, God.
Yeah.
Oh, and and that was the trip. Yeah, that was the trip. That was the Zane Grey. We had aboard, we took to England, back to England. There were about 150 Air Force personnel. They were sergeants and below grade, sergeants and in that grade. They weren't
Non-coms.
They were non-coms.
Yeah.
They had been wounded bad enough to be sent back to this country to recover from their wounds. Well, good luck. They draw the Zane Grey, the second hatch number 2 on the Zane Grey were fitted out for people. And they were stuffed in there in pipe berths, a quickly installed head, and they were wonderful. Where do we get men like that? Here they've been wounded, they're well, now they're going back, and they know what they're going back to. And one of my ABs came up and said, Mr. Bessell, you really ought to see what these guys have done for number 2 hatch. Well, it was we were going up the English Channel. It was Christmas Eve, and I went down and took a look, and they had a Christmas tree that was made out of nothing. It was tin foil and God only knows what. And they had paper chain links all across number 2 hatch. And God bless them, the Air Force did have a brain. They salted in a chaplain with these guys. And he could play the guitar, and he had all kinds of calypso songs. Joe Louis and Max Schmeling. And at any rate, when I saw what was going on, any mate that calls himself a mate carries a case of scotch with him to piece off the people, the officials in any port you go to may need a little loosening up. And
music.
may need a little loosening up. So I took my case of scotch, and the chief engineer, he had another case. So those guys had 2 cases of scotch for Christmas Eve. And I happen to know that they gave the chaplain a box of condoms. Well, they got off in Southampton the next morning, and they had to go down a scramble net into a small boat. And the chaplain, after coming down the scramble mat, looked at the ship and he spat it. He said, "Tui, 'cause I ain't gray." I'm glad to be off her. And but where do you get men like that?
So, Bob, you've got a zillion stories. I think we could be here for hours. We kind of have a limit where we pull it to a close, but we're not done with you, of course.
No, this is just chapter one.
This is
Bob.
chapter one. Gary's actually in the middle of telling some stories of a life event he had too, not like yours.
But in a Grumman canoe. as a
That's
matter of
true.
fact. But this is just
I mean, the fact that you survived it all is just
Yeah.
absolutely incredible. But before we get off, we got a couple of things. One, I don't know anybody 102. I've interviewed one person that's 93 who lives in this complex, and then one that's 90, one that's 88, but nobody anywhere near your age. Do you have a secret for getting to where you are now for all these people listening to us or watching us? Put that mic up there and give us some secrets.
You're walking off a high board.
well, one was get up here on the deck.
Yeah, that's true.
It tells you to get
Yeah, that. Yes. No, there's no. I had an English girl.
Yeah.
Vera Lynn had a song. It went, "We'll meet again." Don't know where,
Don't know when.
don't know when,
Yeah.
but I know we'll meet again some lucky day. And Sheila and I lived through that. And we had 72
Wow.
wonderful years.
Wow.
And my dad used to say the first 40 are the hardest, and then it kind of levels out.
No, I had every second of that union was a fantastic experience. So I think that's why I live to be as old as I am, because I've never had, since the war, I've never had anything really bad happen to me.
So what did you do after the war? Just in a nutshell, got a bunch of years there, but I mean, what was your main line of employment, if there was?
Oh, I hooked up with the Atlas Copco people, and I knew the only thing I could turn to was construction and sales, because I had to write on my application for a job, education, 12th grade, high school. That was it. The fact that I could bring down 3 stars and plot them and show you where you were anywhere in the bloody world didn't mean diddly. I mean, who needs a 3-star fix on the Jersey Turnpike? So how could I sell that? But, getting a job on shore was tough. But the Swedes satisfied, 1,000 miles out at sea, if you had a little jerry engine you wanted to start, and the product that they made was for mining, and it was solid. And New York City, funnily enough, is a big mining place. That's the water tunnel job, and the subway is a lot of mining. And I was familiar with the purchasing department of New York City, and as luck would have it, I was able to sell New York. I won the low bid for 125 CFM compressors. These are the compressors they use on the street to repair potholes. And the Swedes were going to have a layoff at that time, and I walked in with the order for 75 compressors. That made a pretty good impression.
I
on
bet
the
so.
Swedes. And they said, "Oh, Mr. Bessell, yeah, well, the city, she's going down to drain. We're going to get paid." Well, what they didn't know was when you win a bid in New York City, the money is put in escrow, and all you have to do is dot the I's and cross the T's and deliver the goods. And those compressors were run by Deutsche diesel engines. No carburetor, no radiator. I spoiled the highway cruise in New York City.
You stayed with them how many years? A bunch?
I was with them 10 years.
10 years.
Yeah, yeah.
So, almost forgot one thing. One of the main things on my list that Mr. Goodwin said is that you are the recipient of 2 Congressional gold medals.
Well, let me put that straight.
Okay, because I know when I called you, you kind of chuckled. But I saw one in the newspaper.
I'm looking at 3 in a frame.
Oh, so that's the problem. There's 3 of them.
I see
So
3 over
No,
there.
no.
no,
No. The merchant.
don't be modest.
No, well, it's this business. If you live long enough,
Well,
and it happens. But
Well, I mean, we're 70 some. I don't have one. Do you, Gary?
no, I've got no.
No.
back, I don't know, months ago, about a year ago, I learned that Congress decided that the Merchant Marine had been a very important entity in World War II, and that we're dying off, and we haven't really been given enough applause. So, in their wisdom, the Merchant Marine created a medal. It's about 4 inches in diameter, and it's plated gold. Well, there is one medal that's gold. The rest of the medals that they hand out to the Merchant Marine is bronze, gold plated. The gold medal resides up at King's Point, which is the Merchant Marine Academy, the Merchant Marine School in Great Neck, Long Island. And then they mailed me a bronze gold-plated medal, which I donated to the folks here at White Oak, because not that I'm not grateful, it's just that I'm also very thankful for the folks here at White Oak. Now, somewhere along the line, a relative of mine was in a meeting in Washington, D.C., and it was something dealing maritime. And they had a merchant seaman who had joined the Merchant Marine in 1944, for heaven's sake, or 45. And they had his story. And my relatives said, good God, I got a guy that went in 41.
Yeah.
So he turned data over to these people, and my data, I'd given them all my stories. He turned my data over, so they decided that they're going to get the local congressman, a nice guy, forget his name,
Edwards,
to come down.
Nice.
And he actually, there's a flag there that was flying over the Capitol the day he went to the floor of Congress and said, and I rise to speak about Wesley Bessell, who was in the Merchant Marine, blah, 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 blah. Well, he brought a medal down with him, but he took it back. So we're only entitled to one medal. Thank you.
Well, I saw the clip. There was a clip on TV and in the paper. So I'm proud of you, I'll tell you what, and appreciative of you. That's incredible. So we want to do one more thing, and you can't hear the music right now, but there's this really good song playing in the background. And Gary, you haven't done this in quite some time.
No,
Will you
we
make
haven't.
the
But
presentation?
this is a real
That he doesn't know we have a university.
We have our own university.
Since he didn't go to college, apparently.
Yeah, you could.
Yeah,
we
you
call
guys
it
didn't
the.
do me much good when I was looking
That's
for a
right.
job.
No,
Well, we call it the Gary and Mark Podcasting University.
only university like it in the world that
Yes,
we know
you
of.
you can apply and get a degree in the same day. It doesn't cost anything. And,
Oh boy, where were you when I needed you?
Well,
well, and here's what you get. You get a BS in podcasting. We have been spreading.
he gets it. He gets it. See,
Yeah, so we've been spreading
Came
this,
to the right place.
and we want. I mean, you, I've got to say, are the most decorated
Oh my gosh.
of. I mean, what you've done to help your country. Good for you, and it's great you're around, and I appreciate you seem to have a real kind of positive outlook on
He does.
things.
He does.
I hope some of that rubs off on me.
I do too, Gary.
Here we go to Bob Bessell.
Oh God, look at that.
There it is, and it's in
Fancy paper.
It's in fancy paper in
Framed,
plastic,
kind of,
framed,
yeah.
sort
Mhm.
of frame.
Woo-wee.
So we want to welcome you to our university. We're actually going to make you our chief historian if we could.
Well, our resident.
We'll put you on staff.
Yeah.
So
Nothing
not
on
only,
the back.
No,
nothing on the back.
no.
Oh, we forgot to. We've got a decal for you. Don't worry. Okay, we do have something for you.
Yeah.
So, Bob, thanks so much for taking your time
Yeah.
out to do this, and
Well, thank you, gents.
we would love to come back at some
We
point.
would. You got too many stories.
I tell you, there's beer in the cooler.
He mentioned that
You
to
know,
me.
that's good.
We always like that. So, I'm Mark,
I'm Gary.
and this is the Gary and Mark Show, and also the Country Life with ColumbusMark. We'll see you again soon.
All right.
Signing off.